the city of Sunbury, and it is January 24th at 6:30 p.m. 2022. Would you please join me in a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
You want to do the swearing in first? You can call the roll. Okay. Should I call everybody? Yeah. Okay. Mayor St. John.
Here.
Brokenhour.
Here.
Ms. Cooper.
Here.
Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Mr. Ryba. Here. And Ms. Miller.
Here.
Yeah.
And we are going to make a slight change to the agenda. The first item that we need to address is we have some members that are either new to the Planning and Zoning Commission or renewing terms, and there's 3 of us that need to be sworn in again.
Step around.
Yours is too, right? Yes. Yes. Okay, so the general, I,
Joseph Shaw,
do hereby solemnly swear.
do hereby solemnly swear
Or affirm. That I will support. The laws of the United States of America.
The laws of the United States of America.
The state of Ohio.
State of Ohio.
And the city of Sunbury.
In the city of Sunbury.
And faithfully. Honestly.
Honestly.
And impartially. Discharge my duties.
Discharge my duties.
As a member.
As a member.
Of the Sunbury Planning and Zoning Commission.
of the Sunbury Planning and Zoning Commission
For the duration.
for the duration
Of my term.
of my term of office.
Cindy, I think, holds the record for sworn to the most of the.
That's true.
At least they're in person and not over Zoom like before.
Right. So I will have you sign these if you don't mind.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda is the commission review Dovfield Partners LLC and 3Bs and K Holdings LLC. Rezoning continued from the December 27th, 2021 meeting. The applicant has requested to rezone parcels from not zoned to planned residential district. The parcels are located along 3Bs and a K road south of Sherman Road. And Mr. Fisher, will you be presenting anything or highlighting any of the changes that you've made?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Thank you.
David Fisher, Kephart Fisher, 207 North 4th Street, Columbus, 43215. Here before you again tonight on this matter. I have our development team with me again here tonight. If questions arise that are outside the purview of my knowledge and experience, so happy to have time with you and to answer questions you might have. I know we have a couple of members that weren't here at prior meetings, and I think we have one new member maybe, but I guess I think we lost one member during that time period. I was planning on making an abbreviated presentation tonight to address the changes we talked about last time, unless any of the members need a more full presentation because they weren't here before. I'm happy to accommodate either way.
Let me ask Joe, Rick, or Cindy, would anybody like a comprehensive overview, including the changes, or do you feel like you're up to speed based on the material, watching the minutes, reading the very detailed minutes?
Maybe a blend between the two. You don't necessarily
Definitely the changes from the original
comprehensive as your
submission.
initial,
Agreed.
but if you can at least hit the outline, the skeleton of it, so that everybody
Sure.
knows.
Okay. Happy to do that. So this is property west of I-71. That's not currently a part of any planned district zoning. We're proposing a planned residence district zoning. All of the lots are single-family lots. Your comprehensive plan in that area calls for multifamily and some of the mixed-use developments. All of this property is south of the new potential on-ramp to 71, the new southern interchange. And so the thought being that because it's south of the ramp, it's not well suited to retail commercial activity. In some early meetings with the city, it was suggested maybe multifamily wasn't the best use here. We came in an original preliminary discussion with some multifamily and some single family. We after those discussions, we went to all single family residential dwelling units. There's a typical planned residence district text that's a part of this. There are some divergences, which, as you know, typically there are divergences with planned districts, and the reason why is because the code permits them, and it's always difficult to be on all four corners square with everything required. We have changed those divergences a little bit since our original filing, and I'll go through those with you. This project is owned by the developer and is ready to go into development as soon as we move forward through this project process. Assuming you recommend to council and council recommends the rezoning, we come back for final development plan, this project would move forward to full zoning. Once again, all residential with a variety of several lot sizes with some open space throughout the project, as well as a major open space along 71. All that's depicted in the drawings and the illustrative materials you see in your packet. Is that enough of an overview, or you want more? I'm happy to give you more. Because some of the things I'm going to touch on divergences, which I'll go through those one at a time again. So things like density and those sorts of things will be part of that discussion. Did I give you enough, those of you who weren't here before? Happy to go further. Okay, good, thanks. So what you got from us in our second filing that I'm sure Mr. Pyle shared with you were some supplemental materials to our earlier bound application materials. I'm assuming you had a chance to review those and insert them in your booklets. What I'd like to do is go through the text and address for you the changes in those, and all those are marked for your convenience. You can see what they occur. So I'm just going to flip pages, if you will, and everything in blue would be new text that we have changed. So the first change is in page 4, where we're talking about the lot sizes. You'll note that we added in blue that there are some various lot sizes. Out of the 52-foot lots, at least 20% of those will be 54-foot lots. And we can talk about the reason for that if we need to. Jim Phillips from Pulte is here, who will be the home builder, so we can address that if you'd like to. That's our first change. The next change is the same thing on page 5, which is committing to at least 20% of the smallest lots will be 54 feet wide, not 52 feet wide. The next change is, I'll come back to divergence. Actually, let's do this. Let's go through the divergences all once again. So starting on page 7, we go through the divergences. The first one is in the PRD zoning district, there's a limitation of 2.5 dwelling units per acre. We're asking for a divergence there to go to 2.98 dwelling units per acre. So an addition of 0.48 units per acre on density. And we'll talk more about density in a minute. Divergence 2, which is on page 8, is it's a kind of a mathematical or geography situation in that your code says that you are limited to 3 units on any single acre, but because of open space and planning, there could be a situation with the size of the lots we have there, where there's more than 3 lots on an acre, So we would argue you look to the density calculation, not the per lot per acre calculation. It's about geography. Everybody get that one? Okay. Divergence number 3 is setbacks. You have setbacks from the road of 60 feet and no closer than 75 feet from the center line. We're asking for divergence to 25 feet. We talked about this last time. The principal reason for that is the product, and we'll show you some further illustrations on product based upon some discussions we had last time we were together. It's the developers and the home builders view that people prefer to have rear yard entertainment space as opposed to big front yards. If you think 25 feet, you get a lot of other developments in Sunbury that I think have front yard setbacks in about that area. Number 4 is side yard. Of course, there's always a discussion in really all planned zoning districts. Your requirement is 7 foot minimum, 14 feet between lots, or 20 foot lot width. We've modified this one from before in that we're suggesting that there's one for the there is a 6 foot minimum on the lot line, 12 feet between dwellings. For lots in sub-area 1, they get reduced to 5 feet with 10 feet between dwellings, and that's all a part of the sizes, with the exception or with the addition of those are needed for 3-car garages, and we'll show you some illustrations that demonstrate the need for that. Number 5 is rear yard setback of 40 feet is what the code requires. We're asking that to be changed to 35 feet with an additional allowance for non-conditioned rooms such as sunrooms, patios, decks up to 10 feet. But in no event will anything be closer than 25 feet to the rear lot line. This was in the change here was brought about by the discussions we had last time we were together with you. Number 6 is lot coverage at 25%. No combination of buildings can exceed 30% maximum. We're asking that to be 50% for 52 foot lots and 51% for 60 foot lots. Once again, we're going to show you some illustrations in a little bit that depict to you why we think this is appropriate in this subdivision. Number 7 is structure separation, which is related to our earlier discussion about side yards and such. We do have to follow the Ohio Residential Building Code, and we will comply with that. And that's it for divergences. Other changes, we changed our plans to match what we're now set in the development text and addressed some questions. I know Mr. Piles had some concerns with what different drawings were called, so we tried to correct all that for you. We tried to be accommodating as best we could for all the comments made the last time we were together. Trying to see here if there's anything else in the text changes. I don't believe there are. Let's just make sure of that. Right. So with that as introduction and background, to our recollection and understanding, there are the following areas that we were asked to further consider after our last time together. The first one was density. I know Mr. Piles, in his report to you, set forth the densities of various subdivisions around the city. One we noted he didn't include, which was Miller's Cove, which has a 3.67 unit per acre density. Granted, somewhat of a different product. Also remember that's on private streets as opposed to public streets. Your code does permit up to 2.5. So we think our divergence to go to 2.98 is appropriate under the circumstances, given the product mix and given Miller's Cove, which has some product similar to this. And so we'd ask you to give that consideration. I'd also point out, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, that this area could permit multifamily, which would drive much higher densities than what we're asking for, 2.98%. The second issue is trees. And Mr. Piles and our consultants have done an awful lot of work on that. What's interesting is when you look at your code, and I think even, I'm not trying to put words in Mr. Piles' mouth, but I know we've worked through this before with Mr. Parkinson. Your code's a little weird about what it says about dead, diseased, and unwanted trees. It's sort of interesting. If they're dead or diseased or unwanted, why should we have to replace them? But your code sort of suggests, and to Mr. Piles' defense, he's reading a code that says, hey, it could be an either or. We would propose that we should not have to count for replacement dead, diseased, or unwanted trees. And if you take that position, we are over the necessary number of caliper inches for replacement trees that are needed. So we ask you to give some consideration to that. We talked about setbacks a little earlier. I think the best way to talk about setbacks, I'm going to have Mr. Hills come up in a minute, and he's got some illustrations that show you. Remember the last time we were together, you asked us to demonstrate to you how the houses fit on the lots and what they look like when they're built. We've got that information for you. And so Mr. Hills and Gary Smith, our planner, will together share that information with you to describe how that would occur. And then lastly is the issue of traffic. As Mr. Piles points out in his report, we did have a traffic study. There were some recommendations for changes on 3Bs and a K. What we would propose, I talked with Mr. Bream about this today, we would propose, we can't move forward without the county approving any road network changes on 3Bs and a K. I know Mr. Piles in his report's questioning how much activity is going to occur on 3Bs and a K and what's going to happen out there. What we would propose is that traffic should be a final development plan issue. That is to say, we cannot move forward with a final development plan and development and construction on the property until the traffic issue is resolved. We think it's premature to resolve the traffic issue now, given what the status is on 3Bs and a K. We need to have the county engineer's input on that. I could see several scenarios occurring. One would be that at the time of final development plan, we do agree to a turn lane and arrange for the necessary right-of-ways for that. Another would be that through the county engineer working with Mr. Bauserman, we agree that there's payments in lieu, so the fund is created as development continues to occur on 3Bs and a K, that there's monies available to build the road network as necessary as development continues. Once again, we're not trying to get away from an obligation. We're simply suggesting that the time of zoning isn't the time to have final agreement on that, because of all that's occurring out in that area. So what that would like to do is turn it over to Mr. Hills and Mr. Smith as necessary. They've got some depictions and drawings for you to go over exactly why we're asking for the divergences we're seeking on side yard and rear yard and how they work and why we think they're appropriate. Jim? Here.
Good evening, Jim Hills, 475 Metro Place South, Dublin, Ohio, 43017. I'm with Pulte Homes. I'll try to walk through this to explain. And what we're looking at is Exhibit D6, which the mayor requested at our last hearing to really kind of show you how the house fits on the lot and lot coverage. So I'll give you a second. So the top two, close.
Six.
The top two are shown a single family house, which is on the right says Mitchell. Top left is the ranch we offer. Both of those houses are 40 feet wide. That the Mitchell, as an example, is a single family house, and that would be the widest house that we're offering in the series that we've proposed. The difference here, when you look at this, so you're looking at 6 feet setbacks on each side with the 52-foot lot. Now, I just want to repeat, we've stated that 20% of the lots will be at least 54 feet wide, as we refine the plan. So there will be we have some room to make some lots larger. What I want to really talk about is the rear yard setback, because that was the point of discussion at the last meeting. We did change that from what we initially proposed at 25 feet to now 35 feet. And if you look at this from the back of the 10-foot encroachment, which would be like a 3-season room as an example, that will only extend 10 feet. For the single family house on the right, we will still have 35 to 40 feet. The difference from the 35 to versus 40 is there's going to be a variance of some of the lots are going to be 125 feet, only 125 feet, only 10% of the houses. And that's just to give us, as a designer, some flexibility in terms of laying the lots out. But for the prosperity, we're at, from the back of any encroachment or addition off the back of the house, we're at 28 to 33 feet. So that house is a lot deeper than the single family house. The single family house is 40 feet deep. That ranch house is 70 feet deep. So it does take up more lot coverage. Any questions on those?
So you could put a deck or unconditioned room up to the 10-foot max encroachment line. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
So that you could go to 225 feet. What we're showing here is there's a lot more room than that available. But does that make sense?
Could you say it a different way? Yeah, I'm sure it will.
You could go to 25 feet, but because of the depth of the house, particularly the single family house, you're not getting anywhere close to that.
Hey, Jim, could you address, in terms of initial build, how often people seek those rooms at the time of initial build? Is there a percentage you give?
I really don't know what that percentage is. I don't, for a 4-season room, it's not as popular as a deck or a patio would be, certainly. But, whether they do it when we build it, you're going to see more patios, possibly decks, than you would see the 4-season rooms.
And my point to that is, and I made this point the last time we were together, part of this is to have a good process in place, not only for the developer and the home builder, but also for the city, in that quite often, in my experience, people say, well, I'm spending so much money on the house, I can't afford to do this now. But they come back to you 5 years later and say, now I want to add one of these features to it. And unless we help address it now, then their DCA asking you as a citizen, hey, can I build this room outside my house? So this gives both of us some more latitude to deal with that now as opposed to later.
So the bottom two, real quickly, shows the 60-foot lot, and the sketch on the left, you'll see that there's 10 feet on each side of the home as the setback, because that, again, the house is 40 feet wide. What you see on the right side is the addition of the 3-car garage, which then takes it down from 10 feet to 5 feet. We are going to be able to move some lots around as well. Some will be a little bit bigger than 60 feet because, again, we have some room to play, but the average lot size will be 60 feet. If it's a 60-foot lot, then we have that firewall separation that's required by the building code.
You mentioned the 3-car garages, you would only need the 5 feet in sub-area 1 only. How many lots is that possible?
All of them. All of the lots in sub-area 1 will be 60 feet wide. So all of them, you could put a 3-car garage on all of them. And that's the reason we have that minimum 60-foot lot size, so that we can make sure if somebody wants a 3-car garage, they can get it.
That 3rd car is an option.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's another neighborhood where this size of homes, the 7 homes that you have, are on this small of lots?
You're gonna challenge my memory.
Sunbury Road, I'm thinking of one that they put in a very thin strip just south of 161. You know what I'm talking about? Kind of by Cherry Bottom. Going towards Stelter Road.
This has become, without giving you specific examples, these smaller lots are more and more prominent. I mean, we're seeing them in the Powell area in Liberty Township. And it's become, because we can provide more open space, more park space, and homeowners today want less to take care of in terms of, maintenance, when they can use the park space and open space for the kids to play, paths for exercising, and not having to take care of their house.
Mayor, I also suggest, to Jim's point, we do a lot of zonings. These are the lot sizes that we're seeing in the marketplace, and sure Gary, and all over Central Ohio now. Another one that comes to mind for me is on Pollock Road up in the city of Delaware. That's tearing all the subdivision. These are the lot sizes in there.
Are you the developer in that area? Okay.
That's Ryan and Rockford.
Jim, you mentioned about the homeowners are interested in things in the open space, community amenities. What are there other than walking paths and a tot lot? I think that's all I noticed on.
Well, on the back of the site, where it backs up to 71, it's almost 18 acres of open space. 8 of that acres, is it 8, Gary, is active with paths.
Is there going to be like any community pavilion, things like that? Any gathering places?
We may have a structure, no pool, no, may have a structure in the open space up front where the tot lot is, that could be covered. We will determine that going forward, and if that's something that you're interested in seeing, we would certainly include that.
Because I think as you start to get with the density and people wanting to stay there, there needs to be things for them there. Right now, there's nothing there.
There is a pavilion included.
Is there?
Yeah,
In your drawings.
they're in right along Street A, in that 60-foot, that sub area one. So that open space there along the street. It's hard to see, but there's a just metal trellis.
No clubhouse or anything like
No,
that.
not a car. No.
I think Rick brings up a good point. I know we talked that we're going to potentially defer the traffic discussion until later, but your property is nearly going to be onto the on-ramp of Sunbury Parkway.
Right.
There's a connection from 3 Bs and a K that's got to be within 100 yards, couple hundred yards of your property. And so I'll say it in a different way. I think we're putting a very densely single family property right here, and it doesn't have, I would say, the amenities that to keep them in that neighborhood. And you think like, our neighborhoods are connected. Cindy's neighborhood has a few neighborhoods connected. Yours, obviously, like the neighborhoods are connected. I would expect that there's going to be commercial development along this corridor here. And as much as I like the calculation on paper, on the open space and the recreational open space, I think what I would call functional, which is not code, functional open space layered with the density over top. And I think that's the part that I guess I'm the most concerned about. Probably the biggest overwhelming topic that was brought up was the density, and it didn't go down one unit.
Well, from a density standpoint, we are kind of in that position where, initially we were looking at multi-family, and that's kind of what the plan recommended. So the recommendation was to come out of that. We initially came in for initial discussions with multi-family plan. And so really, this was kind of the direction that the city had given us, to kind of go towards. I do like the comment you had about the connectivity, because we are actually providing connectivity through the sidewalk system, through the path system, to all of that stuff to the north. So if there is commercial development just to the north of us along the interchange, we'll have access to that. All of the residents will have access to that through the sidewalk system from a pedestrian standpoint. So you'll be able to get, to those areas without getting in your car, and leaving and creating additional traffic. So that really is a benefit there. We also have the same situation really to the south, and that open space even extends further to the south. So if that develops at some point in time in the future, there's some connectivity between those neighborhoods as well, whatever that ultimately ends up being. And so, ultimately people could get through our subdivision again back up to the commercial. We also have that path along 3Bs and K, so that, if any of those properties north or south of us are developed, then that could extend again, from a bicycle standpoint to, get you up to the commercial area. So creating connectivity through the plan was really one of the main focuses, really getting people to the different open spaces within the subdivision, getting people over to the main open space along the freeway, and then, getting people to what could potentially be the commercial areas to the north. And I think, from a density standpoint, being right against the freeway, it's really hard to kind of justify going lower and lower density, because it's not a great transition right there from the freeway. I mean, multifamily probably would have been a better transition kind of at the location, but that just didn't have to be the direction.
A couple things that you asked me quickly about other communities. We have three in particular. We have a community off of Overy Road in Jefferson Township with these size lots. We have Nottingham, which is in New Albany, different product, but they're 52-foot lots. And we also, Buell Park and Grove City are small lots as well. And
It's a very large planned residential district. There's a bunch of different product types on Beulah, right?
well, that Buell is actually close to downtown. Well, yes, right. There are. Yeah, there's multifamily and
Right.
empty nester and single family.
Right.
So with the size of this development though, wouldn't Pulte normally put in some community amenities? That's what I'm trying to get, like Sunbury Meadows, I mean, you have it. Communities at Sunbury.
We would typically, what we put in are typically the open spaces, the path system, pocket parks. Those are the amenities that are typically included in our communities these days. And that's what people are looking for.
From a single family residential standpoint, unless you get to an extremely large planned development, you normally wouldn't see a clubhouse included. A lot of times you'll see a clubhouse included either in a multifamily project or a large planned community that has a multifamily component, has a single family component, may have townhomes or some other things. But a clubhouse isn't normally something that most of the developers that we work with would include in just a single family subdivision by itself.
I say that because I saw 4 or 5 Pulte developments recently that had it. That's why I'm asking. So I mean, they saw it and they look really nice, great, beautiful. And I just wondered why not Sunbury?
Well, we would typically see those more in our empty nester communities where there's some type of a gathering place. In some, not all, but that's more conducive for those communities. Sunbury Meadows is different because it's just so big. So
We brought address this too from a national.
go ahead.
Well, I'm Jim Shrem, 2045 Upper Chelsea Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43221. We're the property owner. Came in and met with the city originally. We develop around the country, in California, prolific in Colorado and Denver, prolific in Florida. Do urban as well as suburban development in conjunction with our co-owners and partners, the Klingbeil family here in this project. I think what Pulte and G2 have said is very accurate in a historical context, not just today. Single family Housing generally does not provide a clubhouse amenity unless it's age restricted or really predominantly focused at 55 and over. Generally, young families are consumed with open space, and the trend that we see today, especially like in very cutting edge communities like Parker, Colorado, outside of Denver, or Louisville, Colorado, is there's a feeling of kids being over programmed. And generally, folks, their kids are going to soccer, they're going to lacrosse, the specialization of sports. And what we see happening around the country is this macro trend to not programming in single family, letting the kids kind of run, do their thing. Folks are not spending a lot of time living in their subdivisions. You know, when I grew up and graduated from high school in 1986, I played 3 sports and I was in Boy Scouts and I had time to run around my neighborhood. Today, when you look at the youth of today, they are never at home. They are traveling sports, specialization. And so the whole composition of what young families do is different than looking in the rearview mirror. And it's really interesting if you look at Bexley, Hilliard, Upper Arlington, Old Town East. Those were all some of the preeminent planned subdivisions in the 1920s and 30s in Columbus. And all of those subdivisions had very high density, tight lots of houses in Arlington, Bexley, Hilliard, Old Hilliard on 50, 60, 70-foot lots. And those open spaces were open. The amenities didn't come until 40 or 50 years later with adding tennis courts in kind of the 70s. And then they were programmed. And now there's kind of this national cycle back to it. And so we see absolutely in our true mixed use communities where we have 1,000 units, like the mayor referenced in Beulah Park. Pat Kelly's a friend of mine. We're doing a 400-unit apartment deal in Grove City right now. It will absolutely have huge amenities. That's targeted towards an age group of 23 to 35 to 40 with a barbell on the back end. Pat Kelly's a fully integrated community. The city is also paying for a massive park in that community. So when the city provides a massive open space incentive like Ike and Beulah did for Grove City, then the developer is spreading that amenity that you would typically build for a single family community over 500 to 600 multifamily units. And the utilization, you know, if you talk to Mark Wagenberger, as a prolific urban developer, would say when they look at the utilization of the swipe cards of who comes in and out of their community facilities, it's generally the singles, not families living within their communities. But I don't know if that's context or whatever, but I think I hear you that you'd like an amenity, but in 250 unit single family project is highly unusual on the national landscape to see that type of community facility. Just point of context, that helps. Any questions? Or I mean, I realize you all may not agree with that, but it's a little historical context.
I understand what you're talking about, and I understand the differences between the type of communities and the direction the communities are going. And I can see why having less amenities and more open space. But if you're going with lower amenities, then I would expect some of the changes that you've asked for not to be in this community because you were going for a different type, like you wouldn't squeeze the 3-car garage on sub area 1 because they're going to be already close and not be there. They're not going to need the 3 cars. So you're going to have a lower cost housing here than you would at Sunbury Meadows or the communities of Sunbury because of all the other things not being there. Is that the case?
You're talking about the fact that the 60-foot lots are up front.
No, I'm talking about since there's less amenities, like communities of Sunbury and Sunbury Meadows have pools and stuff like that. The density is here and everything, and you're going away from those type of amenities to more open space. I would expect the houses cost to be lower, the starting cost.
I think that, I mean, we are, you know, there's some price sensitivity due to where this is located. I mean, it does back up to 71. So You know, we have to be cognizant of, you know, where our buyers are going to come from, who they're going to be. And so, you know, we do have some cost sensitivity to that. I think one more thing about amenities is on a community this size, there is a cost burden if you're doing something as like a clubhouse and a pool, because unlike Sunbury Meadows, where you're talking 800 or 900 homes that are sharing the cost, we're talking about 250.
Sunbury Meadows, what, 268?
I think, yeah, it's combined.
It's not-
there's
there's a lot of-
combined,
When you're
there's
looking at the whole
500.
thing, it's big, but just that one side, it's not that
Yeah,
big.
there's 500 combined
Yeah.
and there's 2 pools.
So you split it in half.
Well, Sunbury Meadows, okay.
Sunbury Meadows West. So, I mean, it's similar size,
But if that is, if they're separate,
separate HOAs as well.
I guess in my point of view is the location and the less amenities and even the densities is okay if you're going for a lower market than you are for the area here. And that's kind of where I'm interested. Is that what we're going for here? You know, like Common Bent, you know, you're kind of going after the 55 and older. What kind of market are you going after here?
young families.
So are they going to be the ones that drive downtown Columbus? Or are they going to be the ones that go to work in Delaware at the plants and stuff?
Well, it could be, it could be anything. I mean, it's, when you're talking about price points and, you know, we haven't gotten that far, but I mean, we don't, it's very difficult to be below $350,000 these days on a single family house. We can keep our price point down and serve more buyers because of the location and keeping the price point down. And the school district, which is a huge factor.
I'll just jump in real quick. So back into some of the meetings where we were talking multifamily versus single family, I was in some of those meetings. I don't recall us saying, hey, you know what, let's do single family and bring forward 7 divergences. The last meeting we had, we talked about density. I'll go back to it. You guys didn't reduce a unit. You know, we weren't specific. I think we were at the end of the year and said, you know what, hey, you know, we're thinking they're going to come back. What I will say is you did a nice job on connecting the trails. You did a nice job showing the tree exhibits. The density is, I mean, Vince's development, not a good contrast or comparison. I mean, the private streets, enclosed facility, we did that we recommended that as an alternative because we had commercial use directly next to it, a fire station, and we were transitioning into a residential neighborhood. This is a fresh plot of land that I see this going downhill into what Deborah's saying. I think we would be forcing, you know, bringing in a lower price point and potentially jeopardizing the area if we're saying this is the standard going forward. And, you know, compared to the other PRDs that we've done recently, the larger ones, I think you saw Steve's memo. I mean, this is significantly more dense in comparison. And really, it comes down to, you know, you're just squeezing a huge house on a small lot. That's, in my opinion, the bottom line. So, anybody else want to talk?
You keep making references to like Common Bent and the Romanelli development and whatnot. Those developments are one street, not a whole neighborhood. That's kind of how I see it. The density is a bit much. If you just reduced one house per street, you wouldn't even have to worry about any of your side yard setbacks. Because if you take away one house, 54 feet, 20 lots, that's 2.7 per street that you're gaining there.
I'll just mention one other thing, that in terms of the numbers, to get them down to what our code requires, it's a 41 house reduction. 41 units. I mean, that entire middle section, if you look here, that's less than 41 units. I mean, you have to almost include the South Street and the entire middle section if you get up to try to get the code. Which if you're at code, we wouldn't even be discussing this, in my opinion. But we're not there.
Can I just make a couple of comments?
Yes.
Please understand, we're not suggesting that you told us not to do apartments out there, or we should do apartments out there. It was talking about the discussions we had, so we're not trying to put words in your mouth about that.
Right.
Secondly, the comparison to Miller's Cove, Roman Alley development, we weren't trying to make a direct comparison because it's a much higher density. Keep in mind that with private streets and those sorts of things, that where you don't have setbacks to worry about because of the private street, you necessarily push higher density that we couldn't push if we wanted to with public streets because of setbacks and that sort of thing. It's interesting though, when you think about Miller's Cove and the development around it, and you're absolutely right about that. Kind of back to the discussion we had earlier about the traffic study and our recommendation in that regard. I think what happens on 3Bs and a K going into the future, I think it's a pretty safe bet that north of us is going to be in large part commercial, retail, and multifamily, right? And so when you think of planning concepts, and I'm not the expert on that, Mr. Smith is, but you're going to find that when you plan mixed use around what use belongs next to what use. And so when you think about this development being just south of the southern interchange, the question is, what is the price point for homes that people want to buy to live in close proximity to the southern interchange and close proximity to I-71? Thirdly, or whatever point I'm on, just point to with respect to lot sizes, you heard us say earlier, and I think the demographics and the zonings that you see around Central Ohio bear this out, that these size lots are the size of lots that people do want to buy going into the future. I think you can look at some of the lots over and the recent zonings we've done, granted while lower densities, the lot sizes in large part aren't materially different because you have more people saying, I want a lot of house, but I don't want a big lot to take care of, and I'd rather have an open space community that I can use those amenities opposed to me spending my whole Saturday afternoon mowing grass. It's just, so even if we significantly would cut density, the lot sizes, if they were much bigger, don't really work in the marketplace because that's not what people want. And so you've got this kind of matrix that we've got to work through together with you to say, what is the right lot size? What is the demographic we're appealing to? What are we going to be next to? What's going to happen on 3Bs and a K? Let's face it, we're the first guys in. And so we're all kind of shooting the dark here in part, but I do think what we do know is this other interchange is just to our north. And you have to ask the question, what is the price point for homes in that close proximity, all that's going on just to the north of us? And to Ms. Miller's point, and I think that Mr. Hills answered it in a different way earlier. Yes, the price point here is different. It doesn't mean you're going to have lower quality housing or different kinds of people living there. It's simply all those factors I just recited, which is this is further from downtown Sunbury, further from all the amenities that downtown Sunbury offers. It is going to appeal to a different demographic of people. So with that said, where are you coming from as a commission in terms of what you'd like to see here? And I realize are we in the give and take comment section here, Mr. Mayor, or are we not quite there yet?
I think that's where I'm at, but I won't speak for the commission. So I know there's some folks we haven't heard from at this point. We have some new members that may have a fresh perspective. So for anyone that would like to voice their opinion.
Let me just make one other comment. You know, the hair on my head, I'm lucky to have it there, and it's awful gray because I've been doing this for a long time. Actually, some would say it's white. Some of the things we're talking about might sound like they're developer driven, but they're really driven by A, the marketplace, or B, working together with you to come up with good development that works for you and works for us. So let me give you a perfect example. We're not even talking about NCAs, but down the road, the problem with NCAs is sooner or later, all those people show up on your doorstep, not the developer's doorstep. Go talk to the people over in Delaware and ask them how they feel about NCAs, because I'm over in Delaware all the time doing things. The bottom line is 10 years in or 15 years in, all these people that don't like their NCA charge anymore are coming to talk to you about it, not the developer who's long since gone. As it relates to the setbacks we talked about, if we don't do it right in cooperation with you, that doesn't stop these people from all coming into your BZA and saying, the guy down the street has a deck in the backyard or has something in the backyard. Why can't I have something similar to that? And with respect to the issue of a community amenity, I did a huge mixed-use community, a golf course community out in New Albany called New Albany Links. You familiar with that? Mm-hmm. The people out there over the years have just become very concerned about the cost of their homeowners association and what they're all paying all the time. So when you talk about pools and community facilities and all those sorts of things, we want to do the right thing by you and by the people who live in the community. But at the same time, we don't want to burden people with a community assessment that down the road they can't afford. And then you have deteriorating facilities or you have disharmony in the community because people don't want to agree to what the assessment's going to be to keep these things going. So a lot of this isn't selfishness on the part of the developer. A lot of this is a recognition of history and what we've learned from the development process over a period of years.
Would this development have an HOA?
Yes.
What would the HOA maintain? The open space?
Open space. Mm-hmm. All the pocket parks and entrance features, the open space, all those sorts of things.
I just pulled up some homes in neighborhoods around there. It's starting price around $550.
Around where?
Around where
Around
this
this.
development's going. Yeah.
So,
250
are those in
units.
subdivisions?
Yes.
Okay.
They're those north,
A little bit south of you.
further away from the freeway.
A little bit. Yeah, not far. Cheshire Road-ish. Cheshire Road, 3 Bs and a K.
West side.
Yeah, Olentangy schools. You guys are Olentangy schools. Even the houses that are in Olentangy School District on the east side of 71, you know, in the Trinity Homes neighborhood, I mean, those are going for $500,000, $650,000.
Joe, if I could add on here.
Please.
From my perspective, the density's fine if there's a reason for it in the community. I just don't see a reason for people to stay there. There's nothing there. It's not like Evans Farm where you got a ton of stuff. And a lot of those houses, they're huge and they're right on top of each other. But there's going to be a lot there. There's nothing here. I mean, there's no reason for them to stay. What, to walk on a trail? That's not enough. Not for the density. Otherwise, I don't see why you need the density.
So to you, it's an amenity issue.
That, to me, yeah, there's no reason to stay there.
Oh, I don't necessarily agree with you about the overall development of Evans Farm, but I'll leave that to myself. But
Just a
that's a
high-end,
good, what's that?
just a high-end example of it. I mean, there's some really large homes, and granted, there's different kinds of homes and everything,
Right.
but they're
Right.
very close together. But there's going to be a lot there.
Yeah.
Here, there's nothing here.
Not sure when it's going to occur, but you're right. Sooner, you know, development sooner or later finds its balance and gets where it wants to go. You're right about that. Okay, so we know that. We know that we have an amenity issue.
Let me just speak because there's been talk about meetings we've had, and there's an administrative team that meets with developers on request. It's not as though we say you have to meet with us prior to coming in, but a lot of people want to meet with us.
Yeah, we asked to meet. Yeah.
And there was some discussion about multifamily, and I agree with you, David. I don't think it was ever a direction that we are saying that this needs to be single family. There was an honest discussion about multifamily and the views, and that it was being fairly scrutinized by zoning. I think it always has been in Sunbury. That's not a new thing. That's a historical fact for the past 30 years. The multifamily's been, and there was a shift, and really it was a pretty quick shift, as I recall it, to all single family. Fine. I don't know that there was a bunch of discussion on density. You are being asked to go somewhere, and I'm not questioning your guys' opinion or your business. You know your business better than I do, but there's never been 52 or 50-foot lots in Sunbury for single family residential. Not in the Mills, not in Meadows, not in Golf Course, not in Price, 60 and up, 70. And again, I understand what you're saying. That's not where things are trending. You know, they say it's because people want smaller yards. Well, 6 feet times 175 feet, I don't know that that's a lot more mowing. I don't know that the person that's got another window 10 foot off of their bedroom window on the house on a 10-foot setback necessarily likes that. Maybe, I don't know, you'd have to ask them. But a lot of what they're saying is absolutely true, but you know, this is a development in a unique area because you've got an interchange right there. And they brought up a good point. I mean, normally there is transitional uses. Maybe you have multifamily normally by an interchange to transition, to shield it somewhat so you don't have to have a huge green space before you get from edge of pavement to somebody's back door of a single family residence. So that was feedback that they took. Maybe that's not the direction the board wants them to go. That's a big concept change. But to the extent you can't make it work single family wise and get down to a more reasonable density, which is what sounds like, you know, you came back, I wasn't here the last meeting, but it sounds like this is the identical density as before and the same, we're rehashing the same issue
It is.
of density. So it sounds like you're stuck on density to me.
Yeah, and I agree with you, David, about the history of this. I agree. I like the meetings that we have informal because I think they give everybody guidance and help us plan. So we're not being critical of those meetings or saying anybody made any firm commitments we had to live with. But I think it's a good part of your process because you got some, you know, you got some various contingents or constituencies there in those meetings. And I guess leaving those meetings, we felt that all single family was a better way to do this. But David's absolutely right that maybe you prefer to see us do a transitional product where we have some multifamily up in the north near the interchange and go to some more lots to the south. Maybe that's a better plan. If you tell us you'd rather see something like that, you know, we'll consider that. Maybe that's a better way to go. I will say this about lot sizes, and I'm trying to scroll back through my mind. There's some pretty small lots over in Golf Course and Price. I agree, not to this size. I will tell you, in my experience, this whole lot size thing, it has been in a state of flux for years now. And those people that have 70 and 80 and 90, 120 foot lots, they're begging to get them redone because there's no buyers for them and they can't make the houses work on those. And there's not a way to make it work, especially the largest lots. I'm in a lot of jurisdictions where people are saying, get in and get me something better and I'll give them more open space, but this doesn't work. It simply doesn't work from a price standpoint. People don't want to take care of these lots. They don't want to pay the price for these lots.
North Star is a good example.
What's that?
North Star.
Yeah, North Star is a great example of that. Yeah.
10 houses a year.
Yeah. Which isn't anybody's best interest.
I think the people who live there like it.
What's that?
The people who live there like it.
Yeah, they do. And it's a beautiful community. Yeah. Yeah, Gary and I both work on that deal. I mean, we're ultimately intimately familiar with it. But he's right from a velocity standpoint in terms of getting it up and getting it going and getting it done, because nobody likes to live through the construction cycle, development cycle. None of us want to live through 10 years of mud on the streets and the concrete trucks coming down the street. None of us wants to live like that. So I'm struggling here to understand where, I know we have some commission members we haven't heard from yet. We've heard from Mr. Ryder that to him it's the amenity side of the equation. Do others agree with that? Would that carry the day if we increase our amenities package?
I'm more about the price point.
Well,
And I'm open to a lot of things.
Jim, can you help us at all on price point? Jim?
And I'm not saying it has to be multifamily or single or density. I just, with 500 plus over there, I think there's got to be a different product over by the highway.
But remember what I said earlier, that somebody will pay $500,000 to live here.
I'm
might
saying,
not pay that to live.
I don't want 500.
Yeah.
I thought she's saying that this needs.
Jim, can you have any guidance on price point? I know, we can't ever walk in, but give us some guidance.
I need to ask a question real quick. So you want there to be a lower price point, Hope? Lower than 500,000?
Yes.
Okay, but what does that do for the Planning and Zoning Commission, why would we want lower property values?
Because of the area, they're not going to sell 500,000 on by a highway.
They're doing it now. They're right north of this, right north of Chipotle, Four Winds Drive, Schottenstein Homes, MI Homes. The entire freeway is lined with residential on the north side of 36. 455. The exact same distance away from here. No, you mean away from east to west?
Yeah.
Oh, no. pull it up. It's,
I don't know, I haven't looked at that.
yeah, it's almost identical. I mean, if you think, the homes that are just south of this and, I can't remember which township it is, but basically there's an elementary school, then there's another neighborhood north. I mean, all up along the 3Bs and a K here, there's neighborhoods that line the
But
freeway.
once again, are any of them butting up against the new Southern America?
So,
No.
can I throw out a different perspective a little bit? I mean, I think
Sure.
every community needs its $500,000 home. And you have areas for that, all around Sunbury, but look at everything that Sunbury's got planned right now. I mean, if you look at everything coming from the interchange all the way down that, extension of Sunbury, the amount of commercial, the amount of industrial areas that you have planned there, they're gonna generate revenue for the city. Those people need a place to live. And they can't all live in a $500,000 house. You have to have areas in your community that will support either multifamily, starter homes or single family. Really, the idea of creating a great community is diversity. You definitely have to have a tax base. You guys are developing that, and I think you're doing it in a smart way. Coming from 71 and relocating 36 and into the village, and with everything that you've got planned there, you are going to generate a tremendous amount of revenue for the city. But those folks, those types of jobs, a lot of those folks won't be able to afford a $500,000 house. So the last thing you want to do is develop a community where you're creating a lot of great employment, but you have no place for those folks to live. So you're going to need a mix of single family. You're going to need a mix of starter homes, and finding the right places to mix those in. Places like this where you are in transition areas, where you're going to be right up next to the commercial to the north of you, right up next to the freeway. I understand there's some stuff a little further down. They're not surrounded by commercial to the north, and they might have the freeway almost as close, but they're not in that high traffic, high density area right there. And so I think we saw this as an opportunity to provide those types of homes where, a lot of the people, a lot of the jobs that you're getting ready to create, a lot of those people will have the opportunity to, live in the community and live pretty close to, a lot of those jobs. Not have to drive that far, not have to get, on the freeway and head downtown to Columbus. I think that's really kind of the opportunity that we saw. Was just the opportunity to kind of feed and support, some of that additional growth with all of the good stuff that really is happening kind of in that corridor.
Jim, price points.
Again, I think going back to the location, it creates, this would be, we want to build a nice neighborhood. We want to build a neighborhood that represents Sunbury well. But we want to make sure that we are also attracting buyers and being at the price point because of the location to attract buyers to come to our community. You have to balance, what you can build a house for and what you can sell it for with the ever-changing cost structure that goes into building a house. Amenities create additional cost and additional burdens for the homeowners association and the homeowners who live there. The older those amenities get, the more maintenance they're going to require, the more expensive it's going to be to live there. So, all of those things have to be factored in. And we're also talking about, as David mentioned, having a community authority where these homeowners will have to pay into that as well. So, we haven't established what the price point is going to be. We have to meet your architectural requirements, which are 25% natural materials. That's in the text. We proposed that. We wouldn't classify this as a first-time home buyers community. That we have we have a first-time home buyer. We have a first move up, second move up. Empty nester. Downsizing. So, but it's definitely a community for families.
What I was going to say is this: if this was purely an economic decision for me, if I was saying, how are we going to reduce the city's costs and, increase revenues by the most, I would agree with the plan here. The density, less roads to upkeep, less sewer lines to upkeep, more sewer taps, more sewer fees. I would agree with you, but my role right here, and sorry, I'm playing the bad guy tonight. I really didn't expect this. I thought it was going to be John. But it comes down to me just interpreting the code, and the density was the biggest one. I mean, it looks extremely dense. I'm somewhere in between where Rick is and saying just carve out some homes. I haven't heard anything about like, hey, you know what, let's look at, creating additional open space, looking at a different product type, changing the setback, something. It sounds like there's just this price that you need to achieve, and I mean no disrespect by that Pulte needs to achieve to make this work. And we're looking at it from the other side, saying this isn't purely a numbers game. This is interpreting code and providing feedback based on our comprehensive look at planning and zoning. That, I mean no disrespect when I say it like that. You're in your seat, I'm in my seat.
Understood. And I do want to point out that we're, I think, 30% open space, which is well above what your code requires. There's a significant open space that those homeowners can.
We're not complaining about open space. It's.
But the way I'm seeing this, the open space is really only beneficial to the homes here to the east, right? All these dense homes in the middle don't get any of that open space.
When we have large open spaces like this, it's because our homeowners want it. I don't think that they're going to be that far away from it, but they're.
Look, large open space is achieved by reducing the setbacks. That's the other point.
I'm sorry.
I said, you said the open space is because the residents want it. I said the open space is a product of you reducing all the setbacks.
Well, the amount of open space is a trade-off for lot sizes. So the smaller,
I agree.
The lot sizes dictate how much open space we can have. If the lots are larger, there will be less open space. There will be less parks. There will be less natural areas because the numbers have to work.
The large open space is because you can't put houses right on I-71. That's what it comes down to. It's not a benefit in any mind, in my point. I love the open space. I'm always an advocate for open space. But this open space is what it is.
I don't think we're intransigent about anything here. So Mr. Piles in his report and in some further discussions with our team suggested some changes in the plan that would increase open space. It's not going to lose 21 lots.
41.
But whatever, it's not going to lose anywhere near either one of those numbers of lots.
Right.
But it does have an impact of some losses of lots, and I'm just going to show it to you. It's a drawing we were working on late today. It does give a perspective over the development over the open space, and its loss is around 5 lots. Let me show that. I'm going to have one copy of it because it came in my office late today, so if you want to pass it around.
John, you want to start?
Probably take a picture and throw it on the screen.
While they're doing that, I just want to take a quick second and introduce myself. My name is Cindy, and I'm on the city council for Sunbury. I've been on council for a few years, and this is my first year on zoning. So I appreciate the grace that you're giving me. I'm just mostly listening tonight. I have attended these meetings the last 3 months as a resident. So if I look vaguely familiar, it's because I was sitting in the back, under a hat trying to just observe. So I'm mostly listening. I'm trying to understand the meaning of this commission is to follow our code and to work with you to make that happen. And so that's just where my headspace is at right now. And I just wanted to preface that if you thought maybe I was quiet and that's why I'm listening and I'm trying to hear what the commission is saying and how you're responding and to see how we can make it work.
Thank you. Steve, are you able to take a shot of that on your phone or something and get it into the computer and on the screen? I apologize. I just got that late this afternoon, so. But that was in response to a recommendation from Mr. Piles. Is that somewhat comport with what your recommendation was, Steve?
For one of what could be many areas, you know, what I said was the back-to-back lots that are in, you know, there's sections in each phase that have some back-to-back lots could benefit from losing a lot on both sides. But, you know, I just scratched in and it's like 12 or more. So this is, I don't think I'm going to be able to, we'll see if I can get this up.
Mayor and Chair, we're spending a lot of time on density. I don't think we're done yet on density, but can we kind of shift gears for a minute to see what we perhaps are done on?
Certainly.
We suggested to you what we think the position ought to be on trees. That if you take out dead, diseased, and unwanted trees, we're in excess of your caliper requirement for replacement. Can we have some thoughts on that?
I'll speak for myself. When I interpreted the code and read the way that you had interpreted the code, I agreed.
Okay.
And I agreed with the amount of replacement.
Okay. And then on traffic, once again, we can't take anything away from you on traffic in order to approval. We're simply suggesting that it's better dealt with both you and the county at final development plan, not now.
I agree with that as well. And what I will say is, I think the traffic is something that we can work together if we make it beyond this phase.
Okay, that's helpful. Any reaction to the drawing we passed around? It's not a huge number of lots, but it is some lots, and that's to accommodate some comments that Mr. Piles had that we're in agreement with.
So does that change anything other than just eliminating 5 lots?
No.
Well, it creates another avenue for people to get to that open space.
What were the lots again? What were the numbers? So I have the
138.
The lot's coming straight off the street, Street A.
Street A.
I think what I heard Steve say, it's all the sections that have the back-to-back.
Yeah,
That's just an example of one.
Yeah.
I don't know what that number of lots is. I don't want to mislead it. It's only 2.
I also posed a question earlier I'd be interested in some feedback on, which is, would you rather see us do a multifamily project at the north end and come back with, because that changes the dynamics for the single family product on the remainder. I mean, we're happy to give that consideration if you think that's clearly that follows closer your comprehensive plan than this does. If you prefer to see us do that, think that has more merit. That would, in terms of the planning principle we talked about earlier about what goes where as it relates to intensity of uses next to retail and commercial and major interstate interchange, that would have some merit.
Well, I'm a little bit apprehensive to say yes right now, knowing that I said, hey, let's look at single family residential, and this came back, and I mean, no offense by that. I mean,
this is the process.
Yeah. So
I'd be interested to see, and you were a part of it, but what do others feel? I mean, your comp plan does say out in this area, this is what we should be looking at.
What does that do to all the divergences and what would be left in the single?
Well, we changed the whole plan. We changed the
Right.
whole plan. That most
But
northern
does that allow
section-
the density to come down closer to 2?
Well, it would, except now you got apartment density at the north end.
I understand that,
So
but I'm still, they're
density
still
there,
talking
perhaps,
about
and perhaps the trade-off is lower
a
density
single
below.
family parts of the development and a multifamily parts of the development.
yeah, and I mean, one thing you gain from adding density with multifamily and going up is you instantly free up more green space. And I'm probably the only one on the commission that's gonna say that. But, you know, it also could potentially give the development more horsepower in terms of an economic engine. That's all I'll say, to potentially address what Rick was talking about around amenities.
Except now you have smaller community. I mean, typically apartment dwellers don't want to share amenities with single family and vice versa. I got a project with like that right now that's blowing on.
Sure.
Because the apartments have transitional people coming through, and the single family users say, why does this bunch of 20-year-olds want to have a party every weekend at the pool? I don't want to have to deal with that. So it doesn't really change the amenity discussion as it relates to the single family portion for that reason. Sure, the apartments would have an amenity package, but it would be exclusive to them. That makes sense?
Can I ask one question, just as a relative? And I understand, I hear you, I understand your concept of green space and size, and this is simply a question, just open dialogue, not a challenge in any way. But I just read through the Brook City Workforce 2050 plan that came out 9 months ago. And I've been tangentially involved with the Intel things that are going on and how that's going to change transportation corridor from Johnstown, 36, 37, all the way over, long before it's been announced. You know, Grove City's in a little bit of a trap right now, which I think is a very well-run subdivision. And their leadership has been very thoughtful about how to grow. But when you look at their 2050 study, for workforce, the number one issue their employers have is the lack of affordable housing for workforce. And so I think about myself, when I got to college as a young engineer, I lived in an apartment. And then I moved into a small shotgun house like this. And then I had a couple kids, and my wife and I bought a bigger house. And then I got older and we bought a bigger house. And, you know, we kind of, the last 15, 18 years in the same community, continuity of community, and we went up with that community. Grove City is a parallel community out at the very end, in a very similar demographic profile. You all are probably a little bit of a tonier besides Pinnacle. You know, you're moving, better school, much better school system. You're moving Walnut. But their employers, I sat with the Coma the other day, who sat with Mount Carmel HR. Their number one issue is lack of housing for their non-physician staff. You know, when we look to what happens on the east side of the freeway, I've shared with the mayor that I think that wants to be a lot of medical. And I think there's a chance that there are going to be some big medical users that come there to probably be on the east side of the freeway. I've seen this over the years. Everybody wants a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 house. There are a whole lot of really good people, fine people. They're just trying to get started, and with inflation, having some continuity. We're also like, this was candidly as a ULI urban land guy. I can't say what's right for your community, but we thought this was the right use. Next to the freeway, next to the entrance. Don Kenny's gonna blow up and have 10,000 apartments and units up here before you blink, and you're gonna have a whole bunch of renters. That's the problem. You know, we would gladly be multifamily on the north side and more, you know, and more single family, broader. We actually came in with that plan because we thought multifamily was most appropriate at the southwest corner. But you know, when we came in, the plan we came in was very similar to this. And I think whether I would develop this property or not develop this property, this location is entirely different than if you just go to Sherman Road and go north of McConnell's property with Jay Mack, who we've talked to with length. You know, what Pulte built there north in Rocky Meadows, 70-foot, $600,000-$700,000 houses, that supports that. Because you're not pinched between two hard points, an off ramp and a freeway. And so if I were looking at this as a master plan community, I would say this is probably the most applicable place to do 350 to 450,000, which, you know, I think my first house was $180,000. I don't know how it got there from there. But I think to Ms. Miller's point, this is just, you know, we tried to go this direction because we thought it was the right course for where you are and a continuum of housing for the community. If that's not the case, I think we are absolutely all ears
you tell us what you want, we'll come back in. I just thought that's what we had kind of set the course on in our earlier debates. I understand that things changed. We have a long way to go on the east side of the freeway. We'd like to see us go forward as we put forth. Fortunately, we're in this wonderful position to be able to land at a very good basis on both sides of the freeway. So maybe doing nothing for a long time is better than doing anything in either place for us. I just don't know. Predictability is always important. But we thought this was the right use based on the conversations we had. We hear there's some open space issues. We're happy to hear some feedback back. But if we're just way off base and missed the mark by a million miles, please tell us what you want us to do, and we'll bring it forth. And if we can't bring it forth, we understand. And so, but we felt like, I think you're going to be, what happens is all of a sudden communities price themselves out of the affordable, and the people that are 25 to 35 have to rent an apartment. They got to go rent a crappy apartment. It's poorly built by Gary Chapman's team rather than own a home. I'd rather live in America where that young person can own a home and have some ownership in society and sit in their kids' system. That's why we chose this product, but we're happy with the apartments. If that's acceptable to say.
I'm not sure. What does the commission want? Maybe I'll do it really quick. If this plan is coming forward today, is it going to pass? As is?
As is, no.
I would say no as well. Are we asking the developer to go back to the drawing board? Or are we asking them to reduce the intensity of use with the same concept, single family? John?
I agree with a lot of what with amenities, with price point. I rarely hear that. I love that because I live in a lesser expensive home. And I would not live here if it wasn't lesser expensive. But the one thing that I think about is precedent. This is the first one. Can we hold up for the next one? And that's where the number gets important. That density number, yeah, it's only a number, but the next developer is going to look at that number and say, well, you gave them this number. So I think that we need some movement on all of those issues. So I don't know that we really require the density that meets our code, but we probably need to go somewhere with it the other way. Lesser, and maybe amenities is also a thing. I am really agree with the fact that amenities are great until they start to get expensive and then you don't want to pay for them anymore. The other thing is with amenities, it's like, well, there's nothing to keep them to stay here. Well, people are not really going to stay unless they really like it. I don't know. They're not going to stay if their fees go really high, and things are only going to get more expensive. A swimming pool is going to cost this much money. In a few years, it's going to cost this much. And if it's worth it to you, then you do that. But I could. So I kind of see all of it, but I think mostly what I have to contribute to the discussion is precedent. How is this going to affect the next one? And what can we live with?
I agree with a lot of what he said. I can say I would not be interested in multifamily to the north and then this development doesn't change at all. I think if that is something that you might be thinking, I don't think I would be interested in that. I think I probably fit your profile of a family that would be interested in a home like this. Every family is different. My family, I would prefer to buy existing in Sunbury Meadows so my kids can play at the playground in the basketball and the pool. I think the density needs to go down. I think we've been clear about that.
Excuse me, I'm Mr. Last comment. You think density needs to go down?
I think we've been clear on that.
Okay.
I need to use the restroom while you guys.
Good.
I'm interested in the price point for the comprehensive plan. While I've been very lucky in life, a lot of people in my family and don't make a lot of money. And they can't afford to buy a house, and we bought the house and they paid the mortgage because they couldn't afford the down payment and everything for several people. And so, and those are people just making under $100,000 and down. So they're the people who are working in Delaware, in the places that are going to be businesses here. So while price point is important, multifamily I'm okay with. I'm not into apartments. I'd be more into condos, duplexes, townhomes, and then some single family kind of blending where the price point kind of can be mixed. Because we've got the 500,000 and we've got this by the highway. I see Sunbury, based on the comprehensive plan, this is kind of our area that we've got to attract for the workers around here. And we've got all this other area outside of the highway that we can get the higher price points. And so, as is, I would be a yes vote if everybody else was going that way, but I don't see that. But I would prefer not to be. I want the price point down to kind of blend everything. Hopefully that understood what I was trying to say.
So I think I kind of made myself clear earlier. I definitely would like to see more amenities, and if not, reduce the density, because you don't need the density.
Can I ask you a question about when you say more amenities? Can you put some color around that? Does that require a swimming pool?
It could be a swimming pool, definitely a clubhouse, something to give these people a sense of community. Why are they there? They're on top of each other. Give them something to do there.
Okay, all right, okay, thanks.
Density.
Huh?
Side yard setbacks, density. I mean, I can see it already. You got 250 homes that are so packed together, you can barely get your riding mower between the two of them. And in 20 years, that's what we're here for. We're here to plan for the future. In 20, 30 years, you're gonna have so many freaking campers and trailers and boats sitting along those roads, you're not even gonna get up and down them. I mean, we have the problem now in town with those things sitting around, and people can actually get in their backyards.
I think we have HOA restrictions and that kind of stuff, but I know what you mean historically. And then you got to enforce it.
Historically, HOAs don't stick around forever though, too. That's my point.
Okay. I think we need some more time to noodle this on our part. Are we gonna be, you wanna just table indefinitely while we figure out what direction we're gonna have?
Your choices are this: you're at a window, a procedural timeline window in our code. It allows for 60 days after the application for a vote to occur. If a vote's a no vote, then you start over. If we have, and unfortunately because of the way the 31 days December and January play out, we can't get to the February meeting within that 60, even though it was only really, one meeting ago that you had that public hearing and the discussion. So what we've done in the past with developers' consent or upon request, we would allow the matter to be tabled and the time told so that you can get to the next meeting if you want to continue to try to work on the plans and come back without starting over and without calling a vote this evening. That's up to you.
We don't want to call it up this evening. I just want to make sure I understand. Can we table to the next meeting and then further table if we're not ready by the next meeting?
Possibly.
You don't allow indefinite.
Again, to me, what the code has always been designed to guard against is this commission just stonewalling and not bringing something forward to the next body.
Right.
But to the extent it's the applicant saying, hey, we're still working here. We have the holidays, and we have this, and we have that, and things are just slower, and we're in good discussion. We want to stay here. We want to keep going. We want to try to meet at least try to meet what the commission is requiring us to do upon your request. In my opinion, we've always allowed to take.
Well, I hope you all hear us, that we're here to work with you. We're not here to stonewall you or to say this is it, take it or leave it. you made it pretty clear what the vote is tonight, and that doesn't get us where we want to go. So we would request a tabling. I'm not sure we're going to be done by the time of your February meeting, but if not, we simply ask to continue tabling. I'm assuming that would be acceptable to you.
So you need a motion and a vote, assuming you're inclined to table it. And it could potentially either be to the February or the March meeting, depending on the developer's ability to resubmit.
Can I ask a question real quick before we do? If you were to add multifamily, or if you were to add different product types, how many different, like, if you want multifamily, how many different steps can you fit within the physical footprint? Realistically, reasonably?
Three max, when you're only talking about 85 acres.
Right.
Yeah, and then, you know, the multifamily is great, but I mean, a little bit of hardship, and then, depending on what happens on the east side of the freeway, there may not be an overchange. An overpass or interchange. All landowners have to work together. And so, building multifamily on a site that doesn't go anywhere on the interchange for another 10 years, that's not super attractive. So I think there's a table I have to think about it a little more.
But I'm not sure we're going to be done.
We're not going
to be done in February, but we can only table with February, David.
No, I think you can, upon request. I just didn't want to make a commitment.
You want to?
But if you're asking to
I'd
be
like to request a table
through March, they can make their motion that.
We'd like that motion.
Doesn't mean you can't show up in February if you get there
that's
before
fine.
you think, but
That's fine.
might as well have it through when you expect to be.
Okay. That'd be our request.
So can I just move to table this request? Okay.
Got a motion to table? Second by,
To the March meeting, right?
yes, sir. Got a second by Mr. Gokenhour. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Gokenhour,
Yes.
Mr. Ryba,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
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 And yes. Thanks very much for your time tonight. We appreciate the hard work that we're all putting into this. We really do. And we'll come up with something that works.
Yes, we will.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Dave, can you keep this for the record? Yeah.
I've got a patent on that table. That's
We'll put a copyright on the bottom.
Send me the check.
We're on to the third meeting, or third agenda item. Commission review of Rolling Hills final plat. Advanced Civil Design on behalf of Rolling Hills and Sunbury LLC has submitted a final plat for a major subdivision located along Golf Course Road. I've reviewed all the material. It looked to line up with the preliminary plat. I went through and measured.
Did you measure?
I did. Are there any comments or questions? I didn't see anything out of the norm. Mr. Parkinson or Mr. Piles, any comments? If no, it's okay.
Yeah, we reviewed it and we provided comments to the applicant. They reviewed them, provided responses. We found their responses and their revisions adequate.
Great. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve Rolling Hills final plat by Mr. Ryba.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gokenhour. He's on fire with the seconds tonight. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Ryba,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes. Mrs. Cooper, please.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Mr. Gokenhour,
Yes.
Sire St. John, please. Yes. Please don't. I was joking. You can call me Buddy Joe if you want. You can call me Billy Bob. All right. We're on to motion to approve the minutes. We did have a meeting in December. Joe Gokenhour was not available. Rick Rival was not available. I don't know that we're going to have a quorum to approve this unless Cindy Cooper.
Well, I was at the meeting and I.
Nah, you
reviewed
didn't
the minutes
participate. I would say
because
that's breaking the rules.
We didn't approve
Never
that
mind.
last time either, so shouldn't we have
You
two
have to go
sets?
back.
You can approve
What can we
even though you
approve?
weren't here, right? Because I think I
Well,
had to do it
you've
before.
got to get your minutes approved.
Yeah.
So, we'll,
So just
we'll
say-
allow you to vote.
I'll allow it.
If you feel like you've reviewed the minutes and you don't have adequate information to allow you to vote yes, you can discuss with your other members to the extent your other members who were here vote first.
Yep.
And they're saying it's accurate and reflects what was actually took place. You can vote yes on it. If you feel like you need time to review the minutes, review the tape, that would be something that you could do in your free time.
All right. I'll make a motion on the December 27th minutes.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Miller. Discussion? Roll call.
December minutes. Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
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 Stay.
Abstain.
Motion carries 4. Excellent work.
Do the November one? I seem to recall we didn't.
I seem to recall we did not either.
Did not do that.
Because Greg Elliott followed the rules and he abstained because he wasn't at the November meeting. I remember that.
Listen, I was here and these are the most, I didn't know minutes could be this detailed.
It's very detailed.
I
Oh,
feel
yes.
confident approving them.
And the detailed
In
minutes
December.
say November 22nd, no quorum. So yes, we need to.
All right.
deal with those.
I was there. I'll make a
So
motion on the
who all was
November
there
meeting.
for that one?
I'll second.
And John, actually, John wasn't. You were
So-
at Disney.
It's okay.
No,
October.
oh, no, I was missing in November.
Yeah. We can approve it. We're ready. Motion.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Gokenhour,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes, definitely.
Stay.
Good rule following there. Good job. We had a zoning report prepared by Steve Piles, the Immaculate.
30 seconds.
Feel too immaculate right now. Let's see, I just want to mention, had a couple houses start, had a couple permits issued. Something that will involve you sometime in the future if we're awarded. MORPSI, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, had technical assistant grants on mostly pedestrian and bike-related infrastructure, planning for infrastructure. And I thought it might be a good opportunity for us to update base maps using their capabilities, have probably a conversation with them facilitating on, once we have that base map of everything we've grown over the last few years in terms of pedestrian ways and multi-use paths, kind of a discussion of future state, and then have them create a new planned future state for our pedestrian and bike system. Especially the idea of throwing something on a map that shows a connection to the interstate and getting across the interstate, because once it's on a map, ODOT has to take it into account as they plan to do improvements. So that's the one item I'd mention. And we're working on our trail town process right now. And you may get a contact from those consultants just to kind of gauge your feelings and perspectives on becoming a trail town.
Trail town is like a standardized way that all Ohio trails will follow in terms of signage and marketing along, especially places like the Ohio Erie Trail. All right. Anything else, Steve?
That's all I have.
All right, discussion.
I actually have a quick question. I was thinking, with the trails that we have, do we have to snowplow those?
Actually, no. There aren't too many that we actually formally own.
Ohio Fallen Heroes is
Yeah.
one that we own. Communities at Sunbury, we do not. Ohio to Erie Trail, we do not.
Generally, they're not.
Because I knew, and how we did.
I know
We had
last
to.
year, I haven't been there this year, but it's, it's right around my house, but the trail between us and Galena. I heard that the mayor, but somebody got out and plowed Galena section. The Sunbury's was still pretty bad, even for walking or anything. And I was kind of surprised actually, because the Preservation Park seems like they're so on it most of the time with their maintenance and all, that they wouldn't have run a plow down it.
I don't think preservation plows our trails.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's a point of discussion to have with
But I
them.
know Powell, we had to buy a special machine. It was just a special cart that did the plowing and everything.
They're difficult when you have a lot of snow and it sticks around like it is now. It makes it difficult to walk on them. I mean, you can't get your footing. So they become kind of less usable.
Well, and then they turn to ice if you don't, which
Yeah,
is even
that's-
more dangerous.
Right. Uneven footing and all that. So it doesn't happen often, but I remember last year, it probably was a snow day or whatever. We happened to be out and we got to Galena, where their subdivision starts, their full team. Boy, it was clear as a bell.
If it wasn't snowing today, I probably wouldn't have had the.
Galena did that. It wasn't Preservation Parks. So. Interesting thing to.
The requirements, when you get to a city and you got certain things, I don't know if that becomes a requirement or not.
It is not.
It's not, it's, if the city decides it's something they want to do for their community, you can do it. You just, as you just pointed out though, you need the right equipment and then you gotta have people to do it and
Money.
and you gotta prioritize it with the streets and everything else that's going on. Yeah.
Silas did ours.
Who did yours?
Silas, that was,
Oh, he did?
he would get in that thing. It was hilarious watching you get in it.
Probably had to fold them over 3 times to
Yeah.
get them into it.
It's good advertisement for a Parks District. Silence members.
While we're in, whatever we're in now, discussion. Zoning code amendments with council.
Yeah, where are we at with that? That's supposed to be
It's gonna be a public hearing.
February, right?
And I think.
First meeting in February.
I think so, yeah.
Public hearing?
Public hearing, yeah.
Okay, have we advertised that?
Public hearing.
Have we advertised that?
Should have, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I had to go through, technically our code says when you do an advertisement, it has to say the general nature of the amendments. Well, we amended about 25 different things.
That's right.
And I didn't feel right with just saying amendments or general amendments. So I
Easy
had to go
trails.
through and help Kathy do that public notice to say by topic. I don't know that we had every single little thing that we changed, but the big ticket items are there and it ended up being a fairly detailed notice when we got done with it. So.
Good.
And I think that was actually part of the delay. You passed it, and when that needed to be written, I was sick. So by the time I got that to her, we had to advertise it, and then you have to wait so long after you advertise for the public hearing. I think we missed one.
Is it,
I think.
is it one hearing?
One public hearing, but then there's the ordinance.
3 times?
Yeah, that would be potentially 3 times.
So March,
Unless you're advocating for that night passing.
March.
I'd talk to Cindy about it.
I just, historically, we haven't done emergencies on zoning code changes because it's so hard to tell people this is an emergency to change our code. It could be, I guess, we can look at what the changes that we're making. And if there's definitely something in the pipeline that you want to cut off, that could be the reason. But normally, Rick, to your point, yeah, it's been the 3 readings in 30 days. So.
I shouldn't have brought it up. I was just joking.
It's also the fee changes are on there, right? No, they're not.
Changes there,
Well,
yeah.
The fee, But the fee layout, like where we point to the fee in the tables, right? We pulled it like
We
the
pulled the fees
individual.
out.
Yeah, so we pulled out fees and we referenced them to a table and they're not in that table.
There we go. We'll get to the
We
bottom.
need to
of
get
this.
on our table, so that'll allow us time to get to the table that may.
You work on it the next
Yeah, there's
8
no,
days or something.
I don't believe there's sorry, I know we're getting a little off topic, but I don't believe there's a requirement for a public hearing for the fee ordinance, so you could schedule it for the same meeting as the zoning code.
Steve's got it scheduled. I saw him write it.
I put a note down for sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now it's gotta hide.
Good question. You got anything?
I'm good.
All right, Deborah, do you have anything? Do you have anything else, Rick?
No.
Mr. Cooper? Mr. Lawrence? Did I say Mrs.?
I hope so.
Okay. Is there anything else? Rick, it's your call.
Move to adjourn. Oh, wait, next meeting, February 21st first.
Perfect. You got a next
So how-
meeting?
How,
I've
do you
got that
know?
wrong.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. Okay.
It's the fourth Wednesday or fourth Monday, so it's actually 28th.
February 28th.
I start messing with them.
Well, no, I had it there. Okay.
February 28th, next meeting, we have a motion to adjourn by Rick Ryba, second by Hot Street Joe. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Ryba.
From the code, from
Or anything that
the
we
code.
can. So it doesn't say variance.
We're adjourned. Thank you.